Hello and welcome to the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. Our guest today is Darrell Burriss, and he's a local author. He's the author of the book, I Do, But I Don't. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
You are my first guest of the new year. so it's definitely going to be a great show.
I appreciate it.
So let's talk about the fact that you were born and raised here in the area. So where were you raised?
In Washington, D.C., Northeast.
Okay.
I had the privilege of being educated in two of the legendary schools in D.C. Elementary-wise would be Burrville Elementary, and high school would be H.D. Woodson.
Very good. So what caused you to write this book, and what is it about?
Well, life caused me to write the book, and God caused me to write the book. The book is about marriage, and it's about how many marriages, including my own, that has failed, why it has failed. We've populated so many different reasons as to why people divorce, but I wanted to get down to the root of it all, and God just gave me the direction as to why we're really divorcing. We're going to the altar and we're saying I do, but we're really saying I don't.
Now, we have people who have a lot of feelings about marriage, but they haven't put them into a book. Mm-hmm. What gave you the oomph to say, I want to write this down and put it in book form?
It's just been an eye-opening experience with my last marriage. I've learned a lot of things, I saw a lot of things, and just really God touching my heart and just saying, this is what I want you to put on paper. I don't have the attention span to write a book. I don't. But I find myself when I'm in that spiritual zone, I can just write. And that's how I got all the information for the book that you have in your hand.
What was the process of writing like for you? Did you write every day? Did you have a certain time of day that you wrote? Did it just hit you every now and then? What was the process like for you?
The process was I had to live the book before I can write about it. So certain chapters I already lived, so I can write about that. Other chapters I had to wait on until I actually went through an experience, and then I was able to write about it.
How long did it take you?
Almost a year. Almost a year.
So when did you, let's talk about your story. At what point in your life did you decide to get married? Is this the first marriage? Did you talk about a couple of marriages, one marriage? What did you focus on?
Really, in my previous marriages, I didn't focus on what I should have focused on. You know, I tried to do the worldly thing, you know, be a good man, go to work, provide for the family, et cetera, et cetera. But there's so much more to it than that. There's a spiritual dynamic to it all that I did not acknowledge in the first one, and it wasn't fully acknowledged in the second one.
What do you think those spiritual aspects are of marriage?
Well, I talk about it in the book. The first one is preparation. You know, we talk about preparing ourselves to try out for a team, and all the efforts that we put in to try out for that team, all the sacrifices that we make. We need to take that energy and put it on God, but we don't. We're a selfish creation. We have our point of view, we have what we want and how we want it, and that has a tendency to take charge over the Word of God. And so when you learn to sacrifice or to give yourself to Christ, you have to learn to give all of yourself. You have to lose yourself per se. So what I want is no longer important. What God wants is important. How he wants it is important.
So let's talk about the choosing process. I want to talk to young people now. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the choosing process, choosing that mate. If you've got a mate who's where you are spiritually, and then you've got another person who's not where you are, how do you come together? So that comes in the whole selection process, selecting the person who is, I guess, equally yoked.
I'll make it easy for you. You don't choose them. God would choose it for you. They would choose that he would choose that person for you. And you would know when he has put that person into your life. I believe that for every man, a woman has been created. I believe that. And I go out shopping, I go out looking, trying to date that perfect person. And I'm looking at all the list of things about them. And I'm saying that this is good, this is good, this is good. But like you said, we're not equally yoked. One person feels one way, the other person feels another way. And that has a tendency to clash. So, but if you have something that is God ordained, nothing can come between it. It's spoken at the altar. Let no man come between what God has created. So that's just not a catchphrase. That's a declaration. That's a commandment right there. No one will come between you. But if I choose you, then I'm running the risk of someone coming between us.
Communication is just essential when it comes to marriage. How do you begin that dialogue?
You begin that dialogue by constantly communicating with your spouse. We should always be talking. We should always have intimate moments together. I believe, everybody says communication is essential. I believe intimacy is essential. That's talking about in the bedroom. I'm talking about intimacy all over. You've got to be close to one another. If you're not close, it's impossible for you two to talk.
So in other words, you're talking about creating a friendship, because I think that's essential too. This person cannot just be your lover. This person has to be your friend.
There has to be your friend. There has to be your rib from the man point of view. It has to be the one that God created for you. All other barriers are broken down when it is a God-blessed relationship.
We hear the kids talk a lot about respect, how you have to have, oh, he disrespected me. How do you make sure you keep that respect for your spouse?
Again, are you Christ-centered? What spirit abides within you? Because if you are, then you are not concerned about having your way. As a man, you're not concerned that I'm the king of the house and you will do what I say and how I say. You know how to humble yourself before your spouse. You give it, she's going to receive it. She's going to reciprocate it. She's going to give it back to you. But what we have to learn is we have to be able to give that first. God gave us his love first. So now as a man, I have to give my love first to my wife.
And another thing in a marriage, there are things that you're going to be better at than I am. And there are things that I'm going to be better at than you are. But knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses, how does that play a role?
Actually, that's actually the beauty of it all. Because if you're coming together as one flesh, that means there's a side of me that's weaker. That's where you come in and you're stronger. So I need to yield and know that where your strengths are, let you take command. Let you take control of the situation. Let you quarterback that situation. Again, I can't let pride stand in the way and say, well, you know, I'm the man, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. No. If I'm weak in certain areas, I'm going to take that step back. I'm going to let my wife take control.
How do you think your upbringing had to do with how you deal with relationships?
It has a lot to do with it. My parents, they were married for 50 some odd years, 51 to 52 years, I believe.
So you saw a long marriage.
I saw a long marriage for one. And they're both deceased now. But I saw their trials and I saw their tribulations. I saw their ups and their downs. And I learned from my father. We used to have some sidebar conversations of what to do and what not to do, or how to treat a woman, especially when you had them days, my mother and myself, we butted heads sometimes. So my father was like, you know, that wasn't right. I know what she said wasn't right, but you as a man have to handle it like this. So those type of teachings really helped.
But I see you honored your parents in the book.
I did.
How did you do that?
Well, I dedicated the book to them. They recently passed, my father in 2019, my mother in 2023. So, you know, she knew of the book, but obviously she did not have a chance to read the book, so I just wanted to dedicate the book in their loving memory.
And you know what? She did see the book.
Yes, indeed.
Now, we know life as a black man is not always the easiest thing. How do you think being a black man and the challenges that face black men at work, at home, social challenges, how do you think just being a black man impacts how you deal with marriage?
Well, we ought to understand, we see the state of the black community and we see how it's falling apart. We look at our communities, we see a lot of our young people, they're on the streets, they're running rampant, there's a lot of crime, carjackings, etc. I believed that if black men retook their position in the home as a husband, as a father. That's your foundation. That's your first church. What you instill in them, they now take to the community. But if nothing is being instilled in them, then what do our young people have to go off of? And I know it's tough out here being black man. I remember a movie, I think it was 12 Years a Slave. There was a scene in there where Saturday night, the KKK burned down the black church. Sunday morning, they were standing on charred, smoky grounds, holding church service. And the pastor was saying, we will not be moved. That's how we ought to be. There's a lot of stuff that's going to rise up against us, but we need to take that position that we will not be moved. No matter what society throws at us, we will not be moved. These are my children. This is my wife. I need to stand for them.
What does that look like in the home, though? When you say I'm standing for my wife and I'm standing for my children, does that mean spending a certain amount of time talking? What does that mean, or what did that look like in your life?
You do what God calls you to do. You spend time with your children. You play with them. You help educate them. You spend time with your wife. I know it's a tough economy out there. It's a hectic world, and we might hit and miss, but we got to make time. The former president of the United States, made time for his wife. They had date night, okay? If the former president can do it, so can all the rest of us. We need to make time for our families. Don't go out hanging with your friends. It's not about spending money on trivial things. It's about putting your family first, and that's the position we ought to take.
What's the greatest lesson you learned from your first marriage?
Greatest lesson I learned is you need to be God focused. I just wasn't. You can't do it without God. One of the teachings I have in this book is that it's a triangle effect where you have God, and then you have the man or the husband, you have God, and then you have the wife. Before we even come together, I ought to have a relationship with God. I ought to be connected with God. She ought to be connected with God. And when we do come together, we're all in one unison. This covenant that has been made, it's not just a marriage license, it's a covenant that we made with God. And so we need to honor it. And so now I need to love her in a way that I've loved nobody else but Christ. I need to have that deep-rooted love for her. She ought to have that deep-rooted respect and love for me. If that part is not in play, then anything is liable to come into your marriage and destroy it. That's why people say that money is a killer of marriages, and stepchildren can be a detriment to marriage. And I heard people say COVID could be a detriment to marriage. None of these things should be a factor in marriage. We say till death do us apart, but unfortunately divorce beats death.
So what would you say was the greatest lesson you learned in the second one?
And the second one is to know that God chooses your wife. You can go in with the best intentions. You can go in God first and headstrong about it, but both parties have to be equally yoked. And if it's not there, it's going to fall apart. Did I hear from God? No, I didn't. I heard from myself, and I wanted to make it seem like I heard from God. But the reality of it all is I didn't, and it caught up with me.
You know, some people will say, well, I thought, like you said, I thought I heard it. Mm-hmm. And then you find out maybe you didn't hear it.
Right.
How do you know for sure what you're hearing?
They say that we pray sometimes, Lord, open up doors that no man can close and close doors that no man can open. When you hear from God, you know. It's not an assumption, you know like you know. And so when that person is in your life, you could be in total denial about that person, and God is going to continue to prick your heart to tell you that that person is for you. You could be thinking one person, in reality, it's this person over here. Again, you start checking off that list of good qualities. They go to church, they teach Sunday school, they do this, they do that. All these great qualities, and you're convincing yourself that this is it. But God has someone for you, and if you receive that person, now you can deal with other things. You can deal with the bad behaviors. You can deal with the bad habits and stuff. You don't even look at them. You love them the way Christ loves us. He doesn't judge us or look at us by our behaviors. We're looked at upon as being God's creation. And so you look at things differently. If I do my own checklist, I'm also going to have a checklist on her as far as what she does and doesn't do.
So that was my next question. What is your checklist after writing this book, after your experiences? I know that the God factor, whether you're equally yoked, is important to you, but there are other things I'm sure that are important as well.
No, they're not, because as long as I know God has this woman for me, that's what's important, because all other things will come together. I trust and believe in that. So if I sit here and say, well, you know, you might not be the one for me because you work a lot, or you might not be the one for me because you have 4 kids. Okay, I may be missing out on something here. Her work could be my work, and we could wind up working together and building businesses together. But if I shut her out of it, I'll never see that blessing. Her children, they could wind up being my children. I can have big influence over them. But if I shut her out of that, I will never know that blessing.
So you still believe in love and marriage?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I never gave up on it. I was.
Why?
Why? I just think it's a great place to be. It's a fun place to be. I mean, we look at the good times that I had in the past, and you say that's a fun place to be. But when you look at the bad times, I want the bad times to be equally fun, if that's humanly possible. In other words, the bad times are not so bad to the point I'm bitter towards my spouse. The bad times have been that way in the past, where I've been bitter towards my spouse. But if I have a love that God has placed in my heart for my spouse, then I won't be bitter. We'll have our moments, we'll be mad, we'll disagree. But in the end, if we say, you go to your corner, I go to my corner, I'm gonna be in my corner missing her. Not mean, okay, I'm glad she's away from me now. It'd be a totally different way.
You know, a lot of times, especially when you get our age, I don't know how old you are, but I'm sure it's going to be a blended family.
Yes.
Because people have had experiences. Mm-hmm. They've had children, a lot of things. How do you gel that all together like you would? And you sort of answered that when you were saying you might have somebody who works a lot, somebody who has children that you may be able to influence. You don't know that now or on the first date,
right.
But there may be a purpose that you two come together.
Right.
So how do you square that? The children, they may have a house, you don't have a house. They may have this, that. So how do you think all that factors in? You think if it's the right person, it just kind of gels?
Well, it gels because the children will feed off of your spiritual energy. They will feed off of your character. And if you come in the door and you're trying to be somebody's father and you're not their father, that could potentially draw a negative impact. But if you come in the door, relax, you're being supportive, you're just being good conversation, you're being friendly towards them, you're caring towards them, you're attentive towards them. Those type of things bring them in. But most importantly, it's all about your spiritual character.
You know, a lot of people nowadays, they don't get married anymore. They'll be together for years and years and years. What do you have to say to them for them to make that step, make that commitment?
You see, marriage has been given a bad name. And so a lot of folks are apprehensive about getting married. They're content with living together, having children together, and just surviving for the 10, 15, 20 years that they've been together. But there's more to life than just surviving. You know, I think, again, 12 Years a Slave, the quote that I love the most is, I don't want to survive, I want to live. That's what I want to do, I want to live. I don't want somebody we pay bills together. I can pay bills on my own. I don't want somebody that, you know, I cannot call my wife, but we lay down together and we do everything else together except for call ourselves husband and wife. And then they try to take that next step and get married, and it winds up not working out. Again, you have lived a life with somebody that you may not have supposed to been to live a life with. Okay, so that person may not have been the one that God had ordained for you, but you lived 15, 20 years of your life with that person, had their children, and now what? You feel like you've lost so much. I hear people say that a lot. I've lost all these years being with you. Again, if you were in a relationship or a marriage that's purposed, you would lose nothing. But if you're doing it on your own, that's exactly how you're going to wind up feeling. So it's important that you understand what it means to be with somebody that God has ordained in your life. There will be no fears. There will be no years lost. There's going to be equal struggle, yes, but you will know how to manage your struggles. And I think that's important, because I remember one of my sons said to me, Dad, you know how to manage me. And I'm like, okay, I like that word, manage. And so when it comes down to, and I started using it, so when it comes down to the spouse, I know how to manage my spouse. My spouse knows how to manage me. She knows all of my ways. You know, she knows my temperament. She knows what I like. She knows what I don't like. She knows what buttons to push and what buttons not to push. So it's a management type thing. If you don't know how to manage that person, then you're going to be in conflict all your days.
How do you find, because you were born and raised here in the area, you also did some time in the Navy. How do you think your career may have influenced your choices?
Well, what's interesting is my career has spanned over everything for 30 years. I've been in restaurant, retail, and banking. But my career was just my job. What I learned throughout my days was that God had placed me in these places to mentor young people, male and female. And so I did a lot of mentoring over the years. And now I'm seeing that for everything I've done professionally, it's starting to come in full circle for what God has planned for me. That includes my writings. That includes, we're starting to open up a food bank. That includes me doing songs and things of that nature. Everything that God has given me is coming to full circle, but the pathway to it was restaurant, retail, hospitality, banking.
And how do you think this book, and I think it will influence young folks in the choices they make? This is sort of a mentoring, do you think?
I think, and I pray it is, you know, and not just all young people, but all people. Married, dating, engaged, I want that to be the influence, so you'll know, because divorce rates are just ridiculous.
Divorce rates are off the chain.
It's just ridiculous.
I've been married 31 years, but I had a
Congratulations.
bad marriage. I married when I was young, got like right out of college. And it was a disaster. It was not ordained by anything heavenly.
I got you.
But I truly believe that that first marriage prepared me, because I knew what to expect. The second time around, and I was ready for it.
Right.
But I think sometimes you may, I made this horrible mistake or whatever, but sometimes that second or third time around is the charm.
It's a charm. It is, because you learn from it. Now, if you haven't learned from it, then no, it's not the charm. But if you have learned from it, if you're able to see that, okay, I see where we're wrong, I see, more importantly, I see what I could have done better. Okay? It's not just about bashing the other person. It's about what could I have done better to make things better. And even if the end result was still divorce, at least I have done my part to make things right.
And that's another thing we as humans do. Sometimes it's always the other person's fault. We will refuse to look, maybe I could have done some things differently. My
first book, Mirror, Mirror, Please Stop Me from Hurting Me, is about that. Very easy to point the finger at somebody else, especially when it comes down to abuse. Very easy. But take that step back and look at yourself and ask yourself what you could have done differently. Did I have to lash out? Did I have to retaliate? Did I have to have my way? Did I have to punch a wall, slam a door? Did I have to do any of those things? Could I have just walked away? Could I have just said, you know what? Fine. I'll yield to you on this one. I could have done a lot of things differently.
When did that realization come to you? Was it something that came to you later on in life? Is it something that was kind of knocking on your door at 20, but you didn't want to open it? When did these realizations come to you that you felt like you wanted to write them down?
I didn't grasp this until recent years, until at least about 2016, 2017, that started to really come into focus.
Was there
for
a
me.
pivotal moment? Something that happened that said, that just kind of, it was a light bulb moment. Were there some light bulb moments that caused you to kind of reflect more?
One of my greatest light bulb moments was back in 2006 when I became homeless. And I remember, I would never forget that day in particular, because on that day, the temperatures during the daytime, very mild, it was wintertime, 50, 60 degrees, I think. But then there was caution that the temps were going to drop and the wind gust was going to make it feel like it was in the single digits, and it did. And so I'm on the streets and I'm trying to stay warm, and I'm standing at the bus stops with the canopies and the plexiglass, and the police are driving by saying, you can't stay there. You go need for underpass. It just reeked. There was just no place for me to go. And I just got fed up with God. And I literally just lashed out at him. I said, if this is my trifling death, then don't let it be a slow one. Just take me out now. But if you got something for me, let me know that you're in control right now. And I promise you, the next wind that came in, I had to unzip my coat because it was a warm breeze. And the temperature felt like it was in the 50s versus being in the single digits. And that told me right then and there that God was in control. And so that's when my transformation came. That's when I had to be like, okay, God is for real. So I'm going to follow the path that he has me on. And it was a long path. God had to work on me on a lot of things, and he had to open my eyes on a lot of things. It didn't happen overnight. It happened over years. So where I'm at today, I'm here because God turned my life around on that day and worked on me ever since.
I am so glad he did.
I am too.
This is something I hope everybody gets a chance to read.
Yes.
It's I Do, But I Don't by Darrell Burriss. He is a local author doing his thing. You have got a heck of a testimony.
Yes.
And then on top of that, for you to say, hey, my next move is opening up a food bank.
Yes, most definitely.
So that idea of always giving. Mm-hmm. So you said you still believe in love, and you
Yes,
still
I do.
believe
Yes, I do. I'm not giving up on it. Not giving up on it. It's going to happen one day.
Yeah, and it's going to be the charm. It
And
is.
I'm going to write a book when it does happen. And I'm going to come back on the show. We're going to talk.
That's right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having
We've
me.
been talking to Darrell Burriss. I do, but I don't. Thank you for watching the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. Have a great day.